motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, a surprising bit of news that I didn't expect to hear. Brandon Figueroa, the former WBC Super Bantamweight champion turned featherweight contender, has re-signed with the PBC and sets up action at 126 pounds. Premier Boxing Champions has prominently positioned itself for participation in a slew of high-profile bouts in the featherweight division by striking a multi-fight extension with Brandon Figueroa, 25 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, and 19 knockouts. Coinciding with the extension, the World Boxing Council has ordered interim champion Figueroa, 27, to fight the WBC champion Rey Vargas. 36 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw with 22 knockouts. The PBC will stage that bout in the fall, according to an official familiar with the situation.
I guess I spoke too soon about Ray not otherwise being preoccupied with anything and available to fight Nick Ball for a second time.
I thought he would be. I guess I spoke too soon when it came to that.
Do you get the sense that maybe you spoke too soon about the PBC's demise?
No, not when it comes to that, because more often than not, what you hear and what you've been hearing is about fighters that are leaving the PBC, fighters that are going away to other promotional outfits to fight on other platforms, whereas Brandon's not leaving, but he's not a new acquisition either.
It's not like this is some new fighter they signed. He was already there.
Former junior featherweight champion Figueroa of Texas earned the interim status by scoring a 9th round knockout of Jesse Magdaleno May 4th on the undercard of Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia in Vegas. Vargas, 33, is coming off a March 8th split draw against England's Nick Ball, who then proceeded to win the WBA featherweight title by defeating Raymond Ford by split decision in Saudi on the 5 vs. 5 tournament won by Queensberry promoter Frank Warren. Since Ball would have had great interest in either settling the draw with Vargas or adding a second featherweight title, he obviously lies in wait for the winner of Figueroa versus Vargas.
What do you think wins that fight?
I like Brandon Figueroa to outwork Rey Vargas. I don't know that he stops Rey because he's not all that accurate a puncher, even though he's very busy, very prolific within a round. He's not the most accurate puncher or the strongest in spite of his size. But I like Brandon to win because he throws punches in bunches, and he presents a unique challenge to Rey Vargas that perhaps Rey isn't used to. Rey's always been a very long and limber fighter, very tall, unusually tall for these weights, and the same can be said about Brandon.
Brandon's huge for these weights too. He was huge at 122, he's still huge at 126.
I don't think Rey's used to that. You know, Rey's a cerebral kind of fighter, more boxer than puncher.
Pressure bothers him.
Like the pressure you saw when he was in there with Nick Ball. But Nick is a very small, pocket-sized featherweight, whereas Brandon, he's got pressure like Nick Ball, but height and length like Rey Vargas, so he's got the right style for the job and the right physical dimensions for the job.
I like Brandon to win.
More substantially, there is the increasing likelihood that by next year, Japan's pound-for-pound king Naoya Inoue will move up to featherweight. 4-division and 2-division undisputed champion Inoue most recently knocked out Mexico's own Luis Nery before 55,000 people at the Tokyo Dome. A stirring performance in which Inoue rallied from a first-round knockdown to win by 6th round TKO. Figueroa had an easier time with Nery in a 2021 title fight in Southern California, knocking Nery out with a 7th round body shot.
If Brandon beats Ray and he becomes WBC champion, maybe he's in the running. But not before Nick Ball, not before Luis Lopez, and not before Rafael Espinoza.
Why not?
Because every single one of those guys in one way, shape, or form is affiliated with Top Rank. Rafael Espinoza, Luis Lopez. Nick Ball is with Frank Warren. He's with Queensberry, but we all know Queensberry is in bed with Top Rank. So if and when Inoue moves up to 126, he would likely fight one of them before he'd fight Brandon.
What about Brandon staying with the PBC? What's that all about?
And Ray.
How do you reconcile all of the doom and gloom rumors that are out there about the PBC when you see that Brandon's sticking around, he's staying with them?
Ray's going back there.
They seem to have some kind of fight plans, some kind of fight date in the fall, and this is going to be on the undercard. I'm assuming this is for the Spence versus Fundora fight.
Two things can be true at the same time.
I mean, it's nice that Brandon is staying with them a while longer, that's good, but that's not the same as acquiring new talent.
It's not a new acquisition, a new signee.
And it's not my imagination that almost every other week for the last few weeks, the last few months, fighters have been leaving. Wasn't it a little over a week ago we heard that Brandon Lee, their guy at junior middleweight, just signed to Frank Warren. He just signed to Queensbury.
Strange bedfellows.
Elvis Rodriguez just left the PBC for Top Rank, and Vito Milnicki, he just followed him. That news was announced earlier today.
So it's not my imagination that fighters are leaving. It's not my imagination that they are now operating at a reduced capacity, much reduced from last year. They're not doing anywhere near as many shows.
We are 6 months into this year, and they've done a grand total of 2 shows so far, not counting the upcoming Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin fight. That makes 3. 3 shows in 6 months.
When this Amazon deal was announced, they said that the PBC would do upwards of 12 to 14 shows this year.
Given the number of fighters that have already left and are still leaving, I doubt they have the bodies to fill on that many shows.
And the money to do them.
It's not my imagination that they're doing a lot less shows this year, 6 months into it, than they were last year, and that their stock is leaving. Their fighters are going elsewhere.
Just because Brandon decided to re-sign to them, that doesn't mean everything's all sunshine and rainbows over there.
Could just be a boneheaded move on him and his handler's part, staying on what is a sinking ship. And it would seem that Brandon's not the only one who's going to stick it out at the PBC. Apparently, WBC middleweight champion Carlos Adames has signed a multi-fight extension with PBC heading into his June 15th title defense versus Terrell Gausha on a Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin undercard, sources tell ESPN.
Why?
Because he doesn't really want that Yanni Alimkhanuly fight. I said it weeks ago. Ever since he was elevated to full WBC champion, his energy and attitude towards that fight has changed. Now, that doesn't mean it can't happen down the line. That just means that here and now, he doesn't want it that bad. Not as bad as he used to when he wasn't the champion.
So he's got this Terrell Gausha fight coming up. This will be his first defense as a full champion. And if he makes it through that fight, I anticipate he'll move into a unification match with Erislandy Lara.
It's either that, or he moves into a unification match with the winner of Erislandy Lara versus Elijah Garcia, a young unbeaten up-and-comer, a southpaw the PBC still has in their roster. I mean, at least to my knowledge, he's still there.
Carlos Adames stuck to his own social media, and he posted a caption that reads,
"What more do you want? Complete and exciting events. What are y'all looking for? Is it not enough? The PBC has given you the best events you could imagine for years, with amazing welters and many more. And everyone who is criticizing now sat down to see those events.
He's towing the company line.
With them, I became a champion. With them, I developed. In live, we need to be grateful. Don't forget, stay tuned to Amazon Prime June 15th and enjoy the card."
He knows he's being criticized for this move. He knows he is because he's the one who used to carry on his own social media about a Yanni Alimkhanuly fight. Well, here, you had the chance to unify titles with him, and you chose to stay over there.
So now we know who wanted the fight and who didn't. Now we know who's full of shit. I mean, if you're Carlos Adames and you see how many fighters have already left and are still leaving, even your own countryman, Elvis Rodriguez, he jumped ship, he went back to Top Rank. Why didn't you follow him?
Because you don't really want to fight Yanni back.
If you would have made the same move as Elvis, as soon as you get to Top Rank, you know what the priority's going to be. Making a Yanni Alimkhanuly fight. You don't want that, because if you did, then you would have went over there. You wouldn't have re-signed to the PBC, and to do what? Fight Terrell Gausha.
Better win that fight.
So I'm going to assume that if he wins that fight and stays WBC champion, he might either unify titles with Erislandy Lara or unify titles with the winner of what could be Lara versus Garcia, Elijah Garcia, who I mentioned earlier. But if that's the play, and that's the situation, what that means is Yanni Beck won't have access to either of those champions, either of those belts. Not if both Adames stays at the PBC and Lara.
Can't Carlos and his team read the writing on the wall?
Maybe they can, but maybe what they also figure is we'll stay with the PBC a while longer. Long enough to procure a second Alphabet title, then we'll approach the Janibek Alimkhanalai fight on more or less the same footing that he's got because he's a unified champion. He's got 2 belts. We want to approach that fight with 2 belts of our own.
Perhaps that's what's keeping him there.
And that's not the worst thing in the world, but like I said, it makes Carlos seem somewhat disingenuous because he used to carry on and on and on about how he wanted to fight Janibek just so that when you get the chance and you're both world champions, it's your energy that changed.
Still talking up the PBC, still towing the company line.
He can do that while it lasts because I anticipate it may not last that long. I still feel the PBC may not survive beyond this year.
They're losing too many fighters too fast.
When they first struck that Amazon deal, they said they would do about 12 to 14 shows this year. At this point, I don't think they have enough fighters to do that many shows, and I don't think they've got the money.
Which is why the fighters are leaving. If you ain't got no money, then there ain't no reason for them to stick around.
And finally, in men's heavyweight news, in defeated Deontay Wilder, Eddie Hearn sees Anthony Joshua when he was at his lowest. The Matchroom Boxing boss had seen something similar before. It was behind the scenes following Anthony Joshua's second consecutive loss to Alexander Usyk. The reaction that I saw from Wilder after the Zhang fight was similar to when AJ lost to Usyk in the second fight, Hearn said. It looked to me like a guy who had given everything in camp and had just completely set his mind and focused on victory. It was frustration. Obviously, AJ had performed well against Usyk, at least better than Deontay did against Chang.
Yeah.
The showings were indeed different. Joshua had lost a close decision, performing better in the rematch than he had in the first fight. Wilder, however, was knocked out in 5 rounds, and the 38-year-old was slow to pull the trigger throughout. I've seen Deontay fight live twice, against Joseph Parker and Zhilei Zhang, and for me, it's difficult to say he's not the same fighter because I've not often seen him live, Hearn said. But the confidence to let his hands go is not there anymore, and that's what made Wilder. If you're getting pushed back by Chang and you've got the right hand cock, you've got to let it go, and he couldn't let it go. When he did, it didn't look like it had the zip that it used to. Hearn stopped short of saying Wilder should now walk away. I don't think anyone has the right to say he should retire, Hearn said, but at the level you would expect he wants to box at, I don't think he can perform there anymore. If he said, I'm done, I think that would be the right call. At a lower level, he could go on for another 2 or 3 years, but I don't think that's his motivation. Hearn nonetheless enjoyed working with the Bronze Bomber at last. For many years, efforts from both sides to get Joshua and Wilder together came to nothing. Most recent was, if Wilder would have beat Parker, they would have followed up by making a Joshua fight, but Wilder didn't beat Parker. The promoter saw a fighter who still believed in his future in the fight buildup, one that was understandably crushed as he digested the realization of his defeat in the aftermath. I know how much he wanted to win, Hearn said. When I saw his trainer, Malik Scotch, the next morning, he was saying, we had a good camp and we were expecting it to happen for us, but sometimes that's the way it goes. When your time is up, your time is up.
I think Wilder's time is up. Personally, I think he should retire.
But whether he does or doesn't decide to continue on his boxing career, it seems that his problems are just beginning, as his longtime partner, Telly Swift, files a restraining order against him claiming domestic violence.
Domestic violence.
Yes, bro.
Deontay Wilder's fiancée, Telly Swift, just got a temporary restraining order against the star boxer after she claimed he abused her on multiple occasions over the last 6 years. Swift, who began dating Wilder in 2015, applied for the TRO in Los Angeles late last week, and on Monday, 2 days after Wilder was knocked out in a high-profile match with Zhilei Chang, and the judge granted it. In her application for the order, Swift accused Wilder of choking her at least 5 times since 2018. She also stated the 38-year-old heavyweight spit on her several other times and claimed he once shoved her face in a pillow in a fit of rage for so long she nearly suffocated. Swift also alleged that back in mid-April, Wilder gained access to her laptop without her consent and sent out disturbing messages to personal and professional contacts. According to Swift, the abuse didn't stop there. She claimed in the restraining order application that Wilder constantly ridiculed her, threatened to destroy her belongings, and expected her to have intercourse with him 3 times a day.
Sex.
Most recently, on April 15th, she claimed he had thrown her out of their Atlanta residence, this despite her being in a fragile state due to recent invasive surgery. Swift, who got engaged to the fighter in 2018, stated she's been living in the couple's LA area home with their 6-year-old daughter since, but Clayton Wilder has been using the home's surveillance system to spy on her. She's added she's worried Wilder could get violent with her when he ultimately made his way back home following his fight with Chang in Saudi Arabia. I believe Deontay is capable of being physically violent towards me upon his return in June because he has expressed that he is furious with me since April and has been physically abusive with me in the past, she said. Wilder has not yet filed a response to the allegations. The TRO, which requires Wilder to remain at least 100 yards away from Swift and their daughter, is slated to remain in effect until June 25th when both parties are expected to appear before a judge.
This is not the first time that Deontay Wilder has come up on domestic abuse charges. I remember way back there in 2013, before he became WBC champion.
He got arrested in Vegas for putting his hands on some broad. He apologized.
I don't know what else happened after that.
But like I said, this is not the first time that Deontay Wilder has come up on domestic abuse charges. It's open to speculation because none of us know what happens in their abode behind closed doors. Is it possible that Deontay Wilder is unstable, toxic, and dangerous to be around? That Telly Swift has been putting up with his domestic abuse for something like 5 or 6 years now. Is that possible?
Timing of all of this is impeccable. As his career is coming to a close, as it's coming to an end, all of this happens.
Well, all of this comes out, I should say, because I can't tell you any more than you can tell me whether or not this broad's telling the truth and all of this actually happened, or this is her way of shaking Wilder down. As neither would surprise me. They're not married, Deontay and Telly. So I don't know that she could get him for alimony. I don't know that she could get him for that, but she can get him for child support, have a kid together.
That's how these situations usually end.
But in a court of public opinion, it doesn't help Wilder's case at all that he has had domestic abuse issues in the past, and hear it now, at his career's end, he may be spiraling downward using psychedelic drugs to try to cope.
Remember, he's been loading up on ayahuasca the last couple of months.
Well, I thought ayahuasca was supposed to give you a feeling of euphoria and peace.
Might have driven Wilder insane.
Who really fucking knows? When it rains, it pours. That's what they say. And that appears to be the case for Deontay.
It's fucked up.